Have we heard of the story of where hundreds of Kenyans were massacred, deep rooted in the forest, where they were being cut off from the rest of the world, which was led by a religious head named Pastor Paul and Tenge Mackenzie? They were led and they were preached and brainwashed into believing that once they starve themselves, which will lead to death, and once they die, they are immediately meeting Jesus Christ. They were brainwashed, and these followers followed this man, and they starved themselves, starved their children, suffocated them, and once they die, they jubilate because they feel, according to their pastor, that they are meeting Jesus Christ. This is the Shakahola Forest Massacre, where hundreds of Kenyans were found in the forest dead. Pastor Paul Ntenge Mackenzie was not always a pastor. In fact, in his early days in life, he used to be a cab driver. He was a cab driver, and but he wasn't really getting much from life. And because he wasn't satisfied with that, he stopped the work. And there's a popular saying in Kenya which says, once you lose a job, get a church or open up a school. And Paul Ntenge Mackenzie decided to open up a church. In the year 2003, he opened up this church named the Good News International Church. And because of it was charismatic, his preachings was centered on the last days. In fact, he was titled the Doomsday Preacher because most of his preachings were about the end time news, about the he was solely against the Catholic Church. So Pastor Paul Mackenzie started having a lot of followers. In fact, he even opened up a YouTube channel where his preachings was being heard. He was talking to a lot of people, and guess what? He was having a lot of followers both online and offline. We would all think that this was just a normal religious preaching, preaching about the end time, about Christ coming, and all of that. No, Pastor Paul Ntenge Mackenzie went further. He was entirely against westernization. In fact, he made his followers to withdraw their children from school. He was against education, he was against hospital, against vaccination, against immunization, against his followers going to the hospital in terms of childbirth and the rest. He was against pills, against television. And this is where he started having loggerheads with the authorities because authorities noticed that this preaching were getting out of hand. From 2003, when it started, to the year 2019, where he started having loggerheads with the authorities, the church was already grown. The church were already having a lot of followers. Good News International Church was a church that had a lot of members already, and at this time he had ardent followers, whereby the followers were already pulling out their children from school. They were not attending to hospitals bills, they were not going to the hospital. In fact, they didn't even have television. Anything westernization, his followers were already so stuck on it. Not until 2019, where they started having loggerheads with the authorities, and he decided to close down this church. Now, this church, guys, was situated at Malindi, which is a town. Now, he closed down the church, and that was where he told his followers that, you know what, Christ is coming very, very soon. Christ is coming June this year, and that if they want to meet Jesus Christ, they will need to follow him to a place where there is no worries, which is named Shakahola. And that was the meaning of Shakahola, where he went to, and a lot of his followers followed him deep into this forest. Now, this forest, you would think is just a normal bush track and all of that. As you go deeper and deeper, this forest was cut off from the world. It was cut off from, there was no internet connection, there was no service, nothing whatsoever. And that was where Paul Ntenge Mackenzie had 800 acres of land, and he moved into the forest with his followers. And now this Shakahola forest had different villages where he started giving them biblical names such as Bethlehem, Jerusalem, Nazareth, Judea, and the rest. They all had compartments, and this is where the horror starts. In the 21st century, we might be wondering why a lot of persons were following this pastor. Well, he was not just charismatic, like I said earlier. it was also nice. In fact, one of the things he used in luring his members to the church was that he was giving out lands to his members. And when people hear this in the country, we're like, oh, this pastor of this church is giving out land. And that was how they were coming to the church. Now, as they were preparing to leave to Shakahola Forest, he told them that they need to give up all their earthly belongings in order for them to meet Jesus Christ, such as their birth certificate, their school certificate, their national ID card, everything belonging to them. Most of them even sold their houses, sold their lands. And you know what, guys? He told them that after everything, they should sell it all and give the proceedings to him as the head, because he will hold it on to them in order for them to go meet Jesus Christ. And you see enlightened people tearing up their certificate, their school certificate, tearing up their ID cards, their national ID card, their birth certificate in order to meet Jesus Christ. And they followed Paul Ntenge Mackenzie into this forest. Now, in the year 2020, where it seemed like, yes, truly, Paul Mackenzie, as they call him, the doomsday prophet, was truly a prophet of God. When COVID-19 hit the world, and a whole lot of person was like, oh, Pastor Paul Mackenzie has said it. He has said it that there will be a lot of disease and Christ is coming very soon. And with that, he had more followers, and they followed him deep into the forest. Now, the starvation starts. Starvation started where he told them Christ is coming June 2023 and they need to be prepared. They need to give up their life for Christ. They need to be ready to face Christ with nothing holding them back. Their house, their cars, their lands, their certificate, everything. They should sell it all and give it to him, and which they did. They went into the forest, started living there, and he told them, you know what? Christ wants you to go in to meet him without any earthly thing attached to you. That is, which includes food. They started fasting. Now, this was a holy fast which lasted forever. You fast till you die, and once you die, you've met your Savior, your Lord and personal Savior. Now, Pastor Paul Ntenge Mackenzie told his believers, his followers, that you know what? We are going to start from the children. This whole starvation started from the children to the youth, from the youth to the women, and from the women to the men. Then him and his close pastors, especially him, he was going to be the last person to kill himself in order for them to, you know, have free way to heaven to meet Jesus Christ. And this is where the starvation started. They started, and children were starved to death. They were starved, and once they see that they are about dying, their own parents would suffocate the children in order to hasten the death. And once they die, there was no mourning. Instead, there was jubilation, dance, and clap in the camp. And once this child dies, they bury them in the shallow grave. In fact, they were buried without dignity. You will see heaps of bodies together in a shallow grave. And that was how it was. Till from children to youth to women, then men. And that was how the starvation. Not until some children who started escaping to neighboring village in that forest. And at first, the neighboring villagers noticed and alerted the police, but the police didn't do anything at the time. He noticed that malnourished children were escaping from a particular camp in the forest, and they alerted the police, but the police did nothing about it. Not until the villagers couldn't take it anymore, and they marched to the police station, and that was when the police invaded the camp. And at this time, Paul Ntenge and his close pastors, those who were running the church with him, were arrested. And at the time of the arrest, they saw a lot of malnourished people in the camp. At the time, a lot of children were already dead. A lot of children were already dead in the camp. A lot of malnourished women, a lot of malnourished people were in the camp. And they arrested Paul Mackenzie. And while in the police custody, he denied every allegation that were laid upon him. In fact, he told one of the interviewers that he didn't tell anybody to fast. He didn't tell anybody to withdraw their children from school. And which was really funny, because from The money he got from his followers, he used it in opening churches, opening fuel stations, opened hospitals. And this was someone who was against westernization, preaching to his followers against all of this. But he was using their money to open schools, hospitals, fuel stations, a whole lot of institutions for himself. And even when they went to his own house, is where he was staying in that forest, they saw that he even had a meal plan. This was someone that also told his followers to fast, for Jesus Christ was coming soon, that they should fast till they die. He had a meal plan, he wasn't skipping meal, he was eating well. In fact, you could see he wasn't looking malnourished at all. While in custody, immediately the police invaded the camp, and they were in that 800 acres of land. There were a lot of shallow graves, and till date they have over 300 dead bodies found in the shallow grave, because this was no longer a church, this was a cult. And in this 21st century, people still fall prey to such preachings, to such brainwashing. Please, I would like to hear your comments below. I'd also like to hear your thoughts on this story. Do you think it has happened in your area or in your country? And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thank you.